All right, today I want to talk about coming from a broken home and, living an honorable life. Because this video was kind of an idea I got from somebody, but it really hit close to home because, would you rather live a life where people respect you or, nobody is going to even show up to your funeral pretty much? And I've witnessed this within my own family and, end life, and it's pretty devastating actually, especially when you come from a family that kind of only cares about money over their actual biological children. It's I never really knew anybody on my dad's side of the family at all, really. I was just never close. It was just kind of how they were. I remember one of the times that I actually saw my dad for the first time after my parents got divorced. I met one of my uncles who I know. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? He was like, apparently I'm your uncle. I was like, okay. And then he had a son that was my age, and I was like, so you're my cousin? He's like, I guess. It's just, it's a very weird, people shouldn't do that pretty much. It's a very weird type of, relationship or whatever. When people aren't really close with their family, they don't talk to each other at all, and then you just randomly meet cousins that you have no idea even existed. It's kind of weird, for sure. But on my mom's side of the family, it just it was a lot different. I knew who all my aunts and uncles were and shit like that. But both sides of my family would pretty much destroyed themselves over money, And, coming from a single parent household, which, isn't easy in this day and age because it's just more and more people are getting divorced. And there's a lot of, single, moms, probably not really many single dads, but lots of single moms raising, boys, which you need both parents. I'm just going to flat out say it, you need no more, both parents. And it's funny how, you'll get gaslight by these people, the reason why you're weak is because you were raised by a single mother, bruh. As if I had a choice in my parents getting divorced when I was a fucking kid, you know what I mean? And then you'll hear I grew up in a single mother household and I turned out good. And there's just so many different factors to even, determine what your future is going to even be, for that to even be a relevant statement at all anyway. But, of course, I don't know, when I was growing up, everything was kind of, at least in my head, good. I had no idea, my mom wanted to leave my dad. The first 2 weeks, apparently, was the first 2 weeks he was ever sober in his life for, years and years and years. And, he eventually, after 2 weeks, he fell down the stairs with me while drunk, and my mom wanted to leave right there, but she didn't and stayed. And, I got a good maybe 9 years out of it, whatever, just growing up in a sort of a middle class, because my mom didn't work. She never actually worked prior to my parents getting divorced. She didn't even graduate high school. She got a GED. She moved out at 18 or whatever, 17, with some guy that she met. And it didn't work out, and so she just never had a job, and she would just take, how it should be, just taking care of me and shit. My dad would be at work and all that. He was never really home anyway, though. He was always at bars and shit. But, it definitely did get really bad, because I think the worst thing about divorce, it's not necessarily the divorce itself. It's just what the fuck these parents do to their kids, because they hate each other so much that they just confuse the fuck out of their kids. You'll hear one story from your dad oh, your mother's so bad, your mother's a horrible person, she did this to me, don't trust her, don't trust a word. Then you'll hear your mom oh, your father's so bad, you don't know the full story of what he did, he's a horrible person, he's a liar. And as a kid, how the fuck can that not be confusing? And especially too, we were actually going to be fucking homeless a decade ago, pretty much, over a decade ago. We had nowhere to go. And, going to my grandmother's house, in Brooklyn, which is now fucking completely, it pisses me off to this day too, because, you know, the thing about it is my grandmother, she passed away last summer, and she was selling the house, and keep in mind, like, these homes, these family homes in Brooklyn, they don't exist anymore like this. They're not, what they do with these houses, I don't really know how to explain it, but they fucking renovate the whole shit. They'll like make one room, like, let's say one room is like supposed to be like a really big bedroom, okay? They'll put like a kitchen and like a little shower and bathroom, and then call it an apartment and rent it out for like a fucking $1 million nowadays. You know, like, they really don't exist like that anymore, or they like turn them into like condos and shit. But you know, I just remember on her deathbed, you know, she never helped my mom out with anything, you know, pretty much. And one of the last things she like said was, you know, it's a shame you couldn't buy my house for me. Now I have to give it to someone else. Now, you would think in your head, right, if you had like a son or a daughter and they were financially struggling their whole life from a divorce that, you know, fucked with their head for years, wouldn't you want to give them that home if you're gonna pass away anyway? Like, leave that home as a legacy, because that shit my great-grandparents had, you know. My great-grandparents came from Ireland off the fucking, what is it, the Ellis Island shit, you know, my great-grandparents. And it's just like a lot of history in New York City. I mean, it's like pretty much like all I know. You know, I did have like the first maybe like 9 years in a different area, you know, in fucking Georgia in the sticks, because it was what my dad wanted. But primarily New York City, it just feels like at home. You know, it always did until like at the very end, you know. A lot of fucking weird people there, lots of like unhinged as fuck people, you know. I'm just like so glad I'm out of there now. But yeah, you would think like, oh, let me just leave this, you know, home so that they don't have to, you know, I don't have to kick, you know, my daughter out and her, and my grandson, you know, because shit hasn't really been the same anyway. And, you know, on her deathbed, she kept saying like, she wished she never had kids. She regrets having kids. And the reasoning for her, you know, selling the place, she was like, I worked hard for it. It's my money. And she ended up taking my mom out of the will and like a couple of my uncles. One of my uncles passed away recently too. And, you know, my parents had me fucking late as fuck too. You know, if you didn't know this, my dad's 70 years old, you know. And maybe that's why I'm all fucked up as well. You know, people don't talk about that. When your parents are really old, you can have like so many genetic disorders. You know, I was born with a tongue tie that fucked my speech and face and, you know, facial development up. This is a real thing that I had to get taken care of later in life, not earlier, because the doctors were like, it's no big deal. It's a huge deal. You know, I want to make a video on that because a lot of people are living with that shit that don't even know like how bad having a tongue tie is, you know. So I had that, and I got recently diagnosed with Klinefelter syndrome, you know. And I guess it's because my parents were old, you know. Who knows? People are having kids later and later and later now. I mean, it's not uncommon. I have a fucking, you know, friend who basically, like, that I knew, who his dad's like fucking 75 right now. You know, he's like 75. His mom's like 68 or some crazy shit, and he's all fucked up, you know, on like a bunch of meds. But yeah, you know, it was just very hurtful words. And like my uncles, I remember they were just like, I didn't go to the funeral or anything. I was gone by that time. But they were just coping like on her last like fucking few months of life, just saying like, it's not her, it's her brain is going, it's not her. But she had always been like that, you know, as far as I remember. And for her to take out like everyone, so there's probably like some bullshit like they have to do in court, like, oh, you know, she like took everyone out of the will basically. And I don't even want to get involved in it. I don't even give a fuck. I really don't care about my family, you know, like I'm just like completely done talking to my family at this point, you know. Last thing I heard was my mom retired and just went to California with a friend, like some friend offered her a place, and that's like pretty much like all I've fucking heard, you know. And my mom's old too. I don't actually know how old she is. I know she's like in her late 60s. But Yeah, it's just like the whole money thing. It's just like absurd to me. If I was a father, I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? And it's funny as fuck too, because like all my grandparents have passed away now. I don't have any left. Let me say, my grandfather on my dad's side, he pretty much, nobody liked him. He had multiple families. My dad was a teenage pregnancy. My grandmother had him at like 16 or whatever, I think even earlier, maybe like 14, something like really, really early, and he's pretty much been with my grandmother ever since. And, it's funny too, like now that I kind of found out, the reason why he was able to get away with not paying child support is because, and I finally got like the full story too about it. He pretty much went on welfare and just fucking moved to a different state, with with my grandmother in this fucking trailer, so he didn't have to pay child support. And that's how he's been living ever since, but anyway, my grandfather, he used to beat the fuck out of my dad, like just a bunch of shit. My dad would tell me stories like he would fucking take his shoes and he would have to wear like cardboard shoes to fucking school. They would never like fix anything or buy anything. They were very like, I don't know, like stingy with their money. Like, I don't remember exactly what my grandfather did, but he made a lot of money. I think he was a mechanic too. He did something with cars, but I think he had like a bunch of different like things he did. But I think mainly he was a mechanic, and he made so much money, and they just never lived comfortably. Like they always lived in shit. My dad would say like, my grandfather would never buy me anything. We would wear like the same clothes that were always like ripped up to school. He was like telling me one time when he was a kid, and he wasn't a drunk either. My grandfather wasn't an alcoholic, believe it or not. He hated that shit, He didn't smoke, he didn't drink. He was just like overall an asshole. Nobody liked him, And I remember my dad telling me this story where he got a bag of chips and like smashed it into my dad's face because my dad asked for a chip. And he just smashed the whole bag in his face and laughed at him. He never really kind of like went into like the extreme abuse that kind of went on. He never really wanted to talk about it, and I could never really get him drunk enough to talk about it. Like sometimes he would, but he would kind of like break down over it, and it's just, I haven't really asked. And when he died, this was like a few years back, they fucking celebrated. They had no funeral. They basically just were so happy he was dead. And it's so funny because, like he got really mad at me for not crying at, that my grandfather passed away. And I was like, well, I didn't know him at all. I didn't know who he was, and then that made him even more mad. And my mom would always say like, I thought your father would be different from, his father, but they turned out exactly the same. He kept saying like, I'm not going to be like my dad. He says it all the time, but he's a literal walking epitome. And now my dad, he has no friends. He sleeps in this fucking trailer, pays like pretty much nothing. He told me like when he dies, he's going to give me the trailer or whatever. I mean, I could live in it, right? It's like for like $1,000 a year, but, he has no friends. He just, I don't know, drinks beer. He's always, every time I can't talk to him anymore really, but every time I talk to him, it's always like incoherent and very like, he's just like cursing at his family. He like, hates his whole family. His friends, he's like, oh, this guy fucked me over. I can't get over it. He fucked me over. He's a scumbag. I wish I could go back and do this. And And I was like, oh my God. Like he's just, just talking shit about everyone. I'm like, oh my God, I'm turning into my fucking dad. The day it really hit me was when I had COVID and I had to stay in this motel, and I bought oh my God, I bought so much alcohol. I bought like bottles. There must have been like 3 empty fucking vodka bottles and like 100 beers. And I'm just sitting in front of the TV, just drunk as fuck watching shit. And I'm like, this is fucking awesome. And I'm like, holy fuck. Like, when I snapped out of it, when I had to go back to work, I was like, dude, I'm like my fucking dad. Like, holy shit. I was just like bitter and angry, just thinking about like all the horrible shit people did to me. That's what he does. He doesn't have any friends. Even the friend that he did have, I swear to God, I've talked about this in the past, motherfucker bounces his fucking head off the floor, falling down the stairs while drunk, and the detectives don't find this motherfucker for months. He's literally in his house rotting away. And he was also like not like a good person either. Like, my mom didn't like that guy. He would like beat women and shit. Like, he was like a overall like scumbag. But it's just, I don't know, like, I remember my mom used to tell me as a kid, like, you're gonna break the cycle. I'm so glad I got you out of that environment. You're not gonna drink. You're gonna be a respectable, honorable man. Only for me to like discover alcohol anyway, you know. That's a very interesting thing I want to mention one day, like how my drinking started and all that shit, you know. It's just like, I feel like I've just been like trying to run away from something I'm like not my whole life, and just trying to be somebody I'm not, you know. And I'm just like a literal spitting image of my dad. Like, he has like the lowest impulse control. He's always threatening people. He doesn't care about life anymore. You know, when my grandmother died, which was like relatively recent, it was like the most traumatizing shit I ever heard from him, because he just goes, well, you know, she started throwing up blood. I tried to give her CPR because she used to be a heavy smoker, and I guess her lungs just went and that was it, you know. And he's like, yeah, she just bled out on the floor. And then, because down there how it works, like if you call like an ambulance or like the police, like they'll take fucking hours to get there. That's how remote it is. So they have to fly out a fucking helicopter. So yeah, I mean, just hearing that shit was just fucking brutal, you know. And he's just saying, he's like, I don't care if I die, you know. He didn't have a funeral for her, nothing. He's like, no one would show up anyway. And I was like, jeez, you know, he like, you gotta like, it's just ridiculous, you know. Like, my grandfather died like the most, like not being missed. Everyone, literally, my grandmother and my fucking dad celebrating him dying, just being like, thank God. And even as he was dying, I remember the same shit with the money. He just kept saying, because, you know, my grandfather, he would work on cars and shit like my dad, and like all the cars, he would be like, sell all of them. I want my money. I want my money. I want my money now. I want all my money. Sell everything I own. I want all my money. And I remember my dad like just saying, he's like, you're gonna die. What the fuck? Are you taking it in the grave? And he did the same shit. He took my dad out of the will, took my fucking uncle out of the will, he just started taking people out of the will. He's like, that's my money. That's my money. That's same thing that my grandmother on my mom's side did. Very bizarre, very strange. Very, very strange. I don't get it. I don't understand if this is just something that runs in our fucking DNA and normal people don't do this. But it's something very bizarre. You know, my grandmother, you know, just died unexpectedly, but my grandfather would have like these weird like things where his brain would just like fuck up. And I don't know. Like, my dad, I remember one time he called me drunk. He was like, I got my gun. I'm going to shoot your fucking grandfather. And, you know, I was like, this was like years ago, like, right? I'm like, you know, you're hearing your dad in like this mania saying this shit. And I'm like, Dad, stop. Like, I don't want you to go to fucking jail. He's going to die soon anyway. Stop. He's like, no, I'm going to do it. And I stayed up the whole entire night. I was fucking paranoid that he actually did something. I stayed up for days. Motherfucker didn't pick up his phone. And then finally he was like, I don't remember. What do you mean? I don't remember. Dude, like, it's like leaving me paranoid for days. And yeah, so there was that, you know. And then, they just don't have a funeral. They're like, yay, thank God. And I think my dad's scared of the same thing a little bit. I mean, I'm not sure, because he's been saying this for years, like, I'm gonna die soon. And he did start turning yellow. This was like around maybe like a year and a half ago. Like, this is from years of heavy drinking, right? If your eyes and skin are turning yellow, you're at end stage liver failure, and you're probably gonna die if you pick up another drink. And seeing him like that, I was like, I just lost my dad. My dad died. You know, that was in my head. I'm like, my dad's dead, you know? And he just kept saying, he's like, no, I'm fine. And guess what? It turns out the motherfucker actually was fine. Guess what it was? So basically, like, his gallbladder, it was like, I guess it was like so inflamed or something from years of drinking that was pressing against his bile duct. And I guess it couldn't, like, his liver couldn't work. But his liver was like, I guess, I don't know, it was probably, he didn't even like tell me like how his liver was doing. They just had to remove his gallbladder and his skin went back to normal and he went back to drinking. So I don't know. I would say he's got like another 5 to 10 years left. I don't even know. And since now, like, I haven't talked to my parents in fucking forever. I don't even know if my dad has my new number. Like, I've changed my number like fucking 3 times already. And I just feel like one day I'm just going to find out that my dad passed away. And I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. You know what I mean? Same thing for my mom. You know, she has a bunch of health issues. She's in late age too. And I just have this feeling of, like, within the next like 10, 20 years, like, if I even like do or don't talk to them again, like, it's just going to be weird, you know, and I'm going to be really alone by myself, you know. I mean, I'm already alone on my own now, but yeah, I don't know. I never felt close with family as it was. It just was always screaming about money. You know, the funny thing is, my grandfather on my mom's side was an honorable, respectable man. Everyone loved him. He did what he had to do. He didn't drink. He smoked. That's how he died, from fucking lung cancer. Go figure, right? It's always, I know this is like a very like kind of cliche, because I don't really believe in karma or anything like that, or like, oh, the world works in mysterious ways. But it always seems like the biggest like pieces of shit in the world like live to the latest age, but like all the good people who are kind die early. Like, it actually kind of does seem cursed like that a little bit. And my grandfather, you know, had lung cancer, and, you know, he held the family together pretty much. The entire family, he held it together. And when he died, this was like maybe, I would say late 2000s, everything just kind of fell apart. My grandmother was never the same. My whole family was never the fucking same anymore. You know, my mom would say that all the time. Even like, I even remember there was like this, what was it? I was like a really young kid. I was probably like 6, 7 years old. When he died, all the people from Brooklyn that like knew him, like, he would go to like this Chinese spot all the time. Like all these like food places, and these fucking people came to the house and like dropped off a bunch of like platters of free shit, you know? And his funeral, there were so many fucking people there that it was unreal, you know? And he just was an overall respected person, you know? He didn't take shit from anybody. He took care of his family. The motherfucker was going, he did, what was it? He would work and go to college in his like 20s when he had his kids. He would fucking do everything he had to do. Like, how it, I don't know, it just worked, you know? My fucking grandmother would stay at home. He would fucking work his ass off to make sure they had a fucking roof over their head. He was very, like, he just stood up for everybody. He was a kind, respectable person that had millions of fucking people at his funeral. Even as far as, yeah, people just fucking giving us fucking food that he used to order from his favorite spots all the time, you know? My grandfather on my dad's side, he didn't have any of that shit. He didn't have any friends. He didn't give a fuck. You know, he hated people. You know, he abused the fuck out of his wife, who, you know, he pretty much trapped in this marriage. If you didn't know, my grandmother on my dad's side never worked once. She dropped out of high school and shit when she was pregnant, and just stayed in that abusive, toxic, just marriage, because that was just what you had to do back then, you know? I mean, that sounds like it sucks, you know? It really does, you know? You have like this violent, oofy-doofy like husband who just treats you like shit, just dangles money in front of your face telling you can't leave. Like, that shit sounds like it sucks, man. You know? Things weren't fucking all sunshine and rainbows back then either. You know, every generation has their own problems. But, you know, I don't know, it just makes me think, like, what kind of life do I want to, like, live, you know? because I'm like deathly scared of people, you know, like talking to people. Like I don't associate, like I haven't associated with anyone in years, really, you know, like IRL and online. I have never like really associated with anybody. I was just always too like in my own head and just not giving a shit, you know. I would say like the last like online friend I really ever kind of had was maybe like probably around like 2015, like with fucking Black Ops 3 when that came out. And then after that, I just quit like playing multiplayer games altogether pretty much. Yeah, I don't know. And like the last IRL friend I probably ever made was when I was like 12, you know. And I've been through so much shit that I just don't trust anybody at all, you know. I just don't talk to anybody. But, you know, it just, I don't know, just like thinking about life and death and, you know, end age, like old age, just of what I've witnessed with my grandparents who are all deceased. And it's funny too, like we like to kind of mourn the dead as if like if they were alive, this X would have happened, Y would have happened, this would have happened. When in reality, you can never know, because my mom always said, like, you know, if my grandfather was alive, she would have kept my grandmother in check. She wouldn't have been so abusive towards me and my mom and shit. Because it was really rough. I don't really want to talk about it or get into it, but my grandmother, like, when we fucking had to move in with her in that family home in Brooklyn, it was fucking hell on earth. They were always fighting and screaming at each other, and my grandmother eventually left and just didn't help with anything. You know, just like demanded my mom get a job or she was going to throw us out on the street within the first day. And ever since, like, my mom had been working like these like 2 to 3 jobs for like the past fucking 15 years, you know, in these like really shitty like retail stores, which she can't even do because she's old, you know. And it just never had a lot of money growing up, you know. Never had nice shit. People like to think I'm like middle class. I mean, when I was younger, yeah, but I would say poor to like lower middle class, you know. I didn't have the newest shit. I didn't have the best shit. And yeah, you know, just that was kind of like what I had to deal with. But yeah, people like to do that thing where they'll be like, oh, if you're, you know, my mom would say, if my grandfather was alive, you would have went to a Catholic school and your life would have turned out completely different. You wouldn't have turned into this depressed mess and shit. And you would have like probably had a nice life if you went to that Catholic school. And if your grandfather was alive, he would have taught you shit. He was my fucking grandfather was super mechanically inclined too. He fucking did everything. Like, he knew everything, it seemed like. The answers to like everything, you know. He could fix pretty much everything, and he was just an overall good fucking person. And, you know, it's just very bizarre because maybe, who knows, maybe if he was alive, my life would have turned out different. I don't fucking know. Maybe if my parents stayed together, my life would have turned out different. Who knows? You can never know. You know, it is fun sometimes to think about the possibilities of like what could have possibly happened in an alternative future. But really, at the end of the day, you know, your reality is your reality, and what happened to you happened. You can't ask like what ifs and what if I did this, what if I did that, because it's impossible to ever know, you know, which kind of fucking sucks. But yeah, you know, just the departure of like speaking with my family and them just kind of dropping like flies over the past year, it just makes me think, you know, like I said before, like, you know, my parents aren't going to be here, you know, forever, obviously, you know, and it just seems like something like soon, because they're just getting really old, you know. Yeah, you know, that's just kind of that. I mean, I don't really have much else to say, I guess, other than the fact that I'll probably I just got to get an apartment soon, you know. I've just been looking into it this week because it's getting a little hot, and I got, you know, I have a stable job. I can just fucking figure out like how to. It's just gonna be a pain in the ass coming home to a fucking empty shit box, you know, because I'll have to buy furniture. I'm gonna hold off on getting like a gaming console probably and shit like that for a while. But yeah, you know, that's pretty much it, you know.